All right, so we're going to talk about section 3 today. You have your assignment. You will have your assignment by the time we get done talking about it. For tomorrow is chapter 36, sections 4 and 5. So make sure you get that done as well. That's not a super long assignment, so you should be able to get it done. All right, so in section 3, we're going to look at four specific countries. And what we're going to be looking at here is specific examples of those things we've been talking about in sections 1 and 2. All those problems like how to have a unified country, economic independence, etc. And so we're going to be, and we'll see that different countries have different combinations of the issues. All right, so the first country is Nigeria. Now, Nigeria got its independence in 1960, which is pretty typical. Now, at independence, they had some positives. They had some things going for them, sort of advantages, if you want to call them that. They have the largest population of any African nation, and that by itself is not a good thing. They also can feed them, so that's a good thing. If you have a large population, you can't feed them, that's a bad thing. They have a number of resources, especially oil. They have good farmland. They also have 2 major rivers that not only help with the farming, but also help with transportation. So at independence, they had a lot of positives, a lot of advantages. Now, challenges, issues they had to deal with. What?
Yeah, I did.
She didn't pass it?
No, she didn't get one.
Okay, so you didn't talk to anybody, you just walked through there?
Yeah.
I need to go back to Tarsa. Now, there's over 250 ethnic groups in Nigeria. The number is not that important, but a lot. And all those issues we talked about with the multiple ethnic groups. So what problem is this going to, what problem does this show up? What problem does this illustrate that we discussed so far? Like all these ethnic groups, what problem is that?
The inherited borders,
Well, yeah, but what's the problem with that?
they're not going to get along.
So what's the problem? How to what?
How to create a unified country.
Yeah, how to have a unified country. It's not that easy to have a unified country when you have this many different groups. Now, and obviously, just having a bunch of different groups isn't the problem. The problem is that every group wants to be in charge. Put your phone away, Ty. Away, not on your desk. Put it away. Got a book bag. You can go in there. Now, so everybody wants to be the most powerful and so on. Now, it just so happens in Nigeria, and this is pretty typical everywhere, ethnic groups tend to live in the same place. That's what makes them, one of the things that makes them an ethnic group. Okay, so in Nigeria, there were 2 groups that lived in the north, the Hausa and Fulani. I'm not going to quiz you on the directions these people live in. In the southeast was a group called the Igbo, and in the southwest was a group called the Yoruba. Now, besides being different ethnic groups, the Hausa and the Fulani were Muslims, and the Igbo were Christian, and the Yoruba were mostly Christian. Okay, so, again, not a bad thing having different religions, but it's going to make it difficult, more difficult, I guess, for creating that unity. You don't feel like you're all on the same team if you have different beliefs and different ideas and so on. So, when Nigeria is getting its independence and they're writing their constitution, they decide to try and, I don't know what the right word is, protect, I guess, each ethnic group in their region. So they want to make sure that in the north, the House and the Fulani don't have to worry about anybody trying to take over their area. And in the southeast, the Igbo don't have to worry about anybody taking over their lands, and so on. All right, so when the government gets going, at first, the Hausa are going to be the most powerful group. Part of that is they're the largest group. Also, Hausa have been around for a long time in the region. You may remember talking about it a couple times. Now, there happen to be about 20,000 Igbo who lived in the north, who lived in the Hausa and Fulani region. In 1966, the government massacred, tried to kill all those Igbo in the north. Guys, I am not going to tell you every day to put your phone away. I am going to start taking them away. This is not a hard concept. Okay? When you get in class, put your phone away. Now, if you are the Igbo and the government is trying to kill you, obviously that's a bad thing for you. What are you going to do? Exactly, fight back. Okay? Try to protect yourself. And that is the beginnings of a civil war. Now, as this civil war gets going, the Igbo think, Nigeria doesn't really like us, and right now we're not too fond of Nigeria. So what is the solution that the Igbo come up with? What would you do personally if you were around people who didn't treat you very well? Carry on.
They create their own state.
Yeah, they say, we're going to be our own country. You don't like us, we don't like you. We'll just make our own country. So the Igbo declare themselves to be the independent country of Biafra. Now, as far as I know, no country in the history of the world has ever allowed part of its country to break away and start its own country. Now, sometimes it's happened, but the government never lets it happen, meaning there's going to be fighting to make it happen. Okay? So the Igbo are saying, well, we'll end all this fighting we'll just be our own country, and then you guys can, you don't have to worry about us anymore. Well, Nigeria is not going to allow Biafra to leave. It's not because Nigeria has any great love for the Igbo. It's because most of the oil, like all of it, that Nigeria has, is located in the lands where the Igbo live. So if Biafra breaks away, all their oil goes with them. Now, Civil War is going to last until 1970, so 3 years. Biafra finally surrenders, and Nigeria is one thing again. Now, obviously, a civil war is not a good thing for a country. It's going to require a lot of recovery. Now, rising oil prices will help that. And we talked in general the other day about prices of oil going up, hurting the developing countries. But if you have oil, the price of oil going up is going to help you a lot. Now, the problem with using the oil money to recover is The government of Nigeria makes the mistake that a lot of us make, and a lot of countries make. The mistake they make is they assume oil prices are going to be high all the time. So, in essence, what they do is they start spending money they don't have yet. They're going to have it. Same thing happens individually. You move into a new house because you're going to make money off your job, and so you get a mortgage, and you got to pay money every month, and then you lose your job. Then you got a problem. Right? Same thing here. Nigeria is counting on the oil prices remaining high, and then they don't stay high. So they were building industries in the cities. People were moving to the cities, which hurt farming. So what all this adds up to is Nigeria had a pretty large debt, and then the oil prices went down, which made the economy collapse in Nigeria. Now, in the 80s and 90s, Nigeria was led by a dictator who was only able to come to power because things were not so good. Now, in this century, with a little bit more, since 1999, Nigeria has had a republic, which is basically what we are, with a president, and things have been fairly stable for Nigeria. But if you would go back and look at those general problems we talked about, you would see several of them showing up here in Nigeria. One of them is how to have a stable government or how to have a unified country. All right, so that's Nigeria. Next up is the Congo. Now, by the way, Nigeria was a British colony. Whose colony was the Congo?
Belgium.
Yeah, Belgium. Remember, the Congo was the one that kicked all this off. The whole scramble for Africa deal. Now remember, the Congo wasn't Belgium's colony. It was actually Leopold's personal colony. Now, after World War II, when everybody else is getting their independence, Belgium has no intention. Now, it is Belgium's colony by this point. Leopold's dead, gone. He's a ghost, and so forth. Belgium had no intention of giving up its colony. This is the only colony they have anywhere in the world. That's one of the reasons they want to hang on to it. There are a few others. But because they have no intention of giving up the colony, they don't do anything to get the people of the Congo ready for independence. Not that any of the other countries are doing that either, but intentionally. They're not planning the independence of their colonies. But what I mean is, some of these other countries' colonies, the people are gaining experience they're going to need when they get their independence. In the Congo, they're not getting any of that. Now, in 1960, some of the people, the people are the Congolese. There's an L thrown in there. The Congolese start rioting, and it starts looking to the Belgians like they're going to have to fight to hang on to their colony. They don't want to do that. So it scares the Belgians, and virtually overnight, the Belgians decide, okay, we're leaving. We're out of here. This isn't the exact timeline, but it's close. So this rioting stuff starts in January, and the Belgians announce we're pulling out by June 1st. Now, you might think, well, 6 months, plenty of time to pull out. Well, it might be, but it's not anywhere close to getting the Congo ready for independence. 6 years probably wouldn't do that. 6 months definitely isn't going to do that. So the Belgians bail. Now, the Congo has some resources. They have some advantages. And we're going to talk about this with every country, the advantages. They have a lot of resources. It's a good-sized area. They have a lot of, they got the tropical rainforest in the Congo. They have a lot of mineral wealth. They have one of Africa's largest rivers, which is called the Zaire River. I believe the Congo River goes through the Congo as well. So they do have some advantages. Now, disadvantages or challenges. Got over 200 ethnic groups. And so when independence comes, virtually overnight, there's going to be over 100 political parties. So when you start trying to have elections with people that have had no experience of running a government, and you got 100 political parties, and so Addie's party wins, what about the other 99 parties? What happened to them? The Secker party won. What happened to the other 99? Hello? Anybody home? One party wins. What happens to the other 99? They lost. In a place that's not had any experience with democracy, losing is not an option. So these other parties are going to be upset. They're not going to follow the government. So you have instant civil war. And it's chaos because it's hundreds of groups. Okay, so 3 years later, this goes on for 3 years, the United Nations steps in and sends peacekeepers to try and stop the fighting in the Congo. Now, for a while that worked. The UN sort of calmed things down. But 2 years later, in 1965, a general whose name was Mobutu Sese Seko took over. From this point on, they just call him Joseph Mobutu. Now, he was a general. First thing he did was he renamed the country Zaire, because he wanted to have an African name for it, not the Congo, which was the Belgians' name for it. And he's going to, as time passes, become more and more and more and more of a dictator. He's going to rule Zaire for 30 years. A little over 30 years, actually. And he's a thieving, murdering dictator. He robbed the treasury of Zaire of billions of dollars, pocketed the money himself. Give you an idea how bad things got. By 1990, only about 10% of the roads in Zaire were usable. Now, I don't know about you, but trying to drive anywhere in the summertime can get frustrating because you run into road construction all the time. But there's a reason why there's road construction all the time. Roads need to be maintained and repaired, and that costs money. And when the leader of the government is stealing all the money, roads aren't going to get fixed. So these roads in Zaire were unusable. Now, the economy got so bad in Zaire that the people resorted to barter. What's that mean again? It's been a long time since we talked about what barter is. Like all the way back in September. What does barter mean? Okay.
You trade one thing for another.
Yeah, there's no money involved. You trade goods or services for other goods or services. So you need food, so you trade that you'll work for the person for 3 days. Or you need food and you'll trade, and we have some blankets that we'll trade you. Now, Mobutu would always hold elections. I put that in quotes, air quotes. But he would always announce that he won with 99.9% of the vote. Now, I don't know why this is, but dictators always do this. They claim that there's elections. Well, they have elections, and they claim that they're, fair. And then sort of the way they prove it is they didn't get every vote. They got 99.9% of the vote, which means, 1 out of 100, well, actually 1/10 out of 100 didn't vote for them. Yeah, that's realistic. Anybody who criticized Mobutu publicly didn't get to breathe for very long. You would have them shot. All right, so this went on for a really long time, over 30 years. Finally, in 1997, Mobutu was finally overthrown by a man named Laurent Kabila. Looks like Lord. Now, Mobutu's memory and legacy is so bad that the first thing that Kabila does is he gets rid of the name Zaire, which was an African name. But to the people of the country, it is equated with Mobutu. And that's a bad thing. So Kabila renames the country the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And they're going to try to establish a socialist economy. Now, they start off, in 1997, they start off with some really rough going because the country's bankrupt. Now, they still have those resources, but it's a matter of using those well. All right, so that's the Congo. Next place is Tanzania. It's not Tanzania. Tanzania. Now, the leader of the independence movement in Tanzania, which was a British colony, by the way, was a man named Julius Nyerere. And he's one of those Western educated leaders that we've been talking about in this unit. So he's going to believe in nonviolence, of course. Now, Nyerere was the first president of Tanzania. He was elected. He was actually elected, not like Mobutu. And he had two goals for Tanzania. One was, your book says he wanted to improve rural life. That means he wanted to help people that lived in the country, which was most people. So that means modernizing, basically. And Nyerere also wanted to create what your book calls a classless society, which is another way to describe what economic system. In what economic system are there no social classes because everybody's the same?
Communism.
Except that's not an economic system. Carry on.
Socialism.
Yeah, socialism. Communism is the government that goes with it. It doesn't have to, but. So Nyerere wants socialism. Now, within socialism, he wants Tanzania to be what your book calls self-reliant, meaning they don't need help from others. So to do this, Nyerere created what he called African socialism. So his plan was to add into socialism the things that Africans had done for thousands of years that they had done well. So it was based on the villages, the traditional African villages. And remember, how did Africans traditionally allocate power? Jade? They shared it. So cooperation is sort of another way to look at that. So Nyerere wanted farmers to work together to help each other grow crops, and that way they can share things like tractors and machinery, and they can share the work. And the idea being more people helping with work means you get more done. Now, there's something else that Nyerere did that your book did not cover, and I'm not really sure why. They should have. Now, I just told you that. So what is that a hint to you about? Okay, this, you need to pay attention to this. You need to make sure you get this, because you can't look it up later. Nyerere, Tanzania is getting their independence a little bit later than everybody else, a few years, not like 20, but. So Nyerere has seen what has happened in all these other countries when they try to start democracy from zero. So you have all these ethnic groups, you have all this civil war, and Nyerere doesn't want that. So he's going to come up with what he calls guided democracy. Guided democracy, which is, the term itself is pretty much an oxymoron. You can't guide democracy. But he wants to. So his plan is to have a one-party state to start with. But that he will still have democracy. Now, that doesn't sound like democracy, but here's what he was going to do. He's going to have one political party and then hold elections, but still give the people choice in the election. So say we're, I don't know, electing dog catcher. And so we're all one party. There's only one political party, but we have candidates. We have Ty, and we have Shelby, and we have Ava. Well, obviously we have an election. Somebody's going to win, and the other two are going to lose. But it's not about the ethnic groups or the parties, right? Because it's not your ethnic group that's losing, it's just the person. Because everybody's in the same party. That's his plan, and his plan is, there's more to it than that. Once everybody realizes that that's how elections work, somebody wins, somebody loses, it's not the end of the world. When he feels like the people have sort of gotten democracy, then he'll start allowing multiple parties. Now, when you look at what Nyerere is trying to do here with all this, there's basically two ways you could look at what he's doing here. Now remember, he's a dictator right now. So this stuff about guided democracy, and we'll make it so we'll wait till people learn how democracy works. That could be one of two things. It could be him being a dictator and just trying to make it look good so the people don't revolt. Or he could be actually trying to do what he says he's trying to do. Now, at this point in time, where we're at in the story, we don't know which one he is. We don't know. Neither do the people. Time might tell, though, so we'll see. All right, so he gets his system going. African socialism, guided democracy, and some time passes, and Tanzania's economy isn't getting any better. fact, it's getting worse. So Nyerere resigns as the president of Tanzania. Cliches are cliches because they are usually true. One cliche is actions speak louder than words. What does Nyerere's action of resigning? It answers that question for us that we just talked about a couple minutes ago. Is he a dictator just trying to make himself look good, or does he actually care about the country and he's trying to help? What does his resigning? I mean, it tells us what's the answer. What's the answer, Mike?
Trying to make himself look good.
Really? So why do you resign then? Because when you resign, you're basically admitting I failed, I can't do the job. Would that make him look good?
No.
Carrie, how are you going to say?
I was gonna say that he actually cared about Tanzania doing well.
Yeah. If he didn't, he wouldn't have resigned. Dictators do not resign. They either get a bullet in the head or they die of old age. Dictators don't give up power willingly. So you can definitely say that his choices, he made some bad choices. He made the wrong decisions. But they were always with the right intention. He was trying to help his country. Now, Tanzania today is doing a lot better. Still not like a world power or anything, but doing a lot better. All right, last place is Zimbabwe. Now, Zimbabwe is actually an example of something we're going to talk about in sections 4 and 5. So it's sort of a preview of what's coming. We haven't talked about this yet. But Zimbabwe was originally part of the colony of Rhodesia. It was a British colony. Now, it was the southern part of Rhodesia, which borders South Africa, the country of South Africa. Now, in this, we're going to call it Zimbabwe, just realize it's not Zimbabwe yet in our story. In Zimbabwe, the white settlers that came got the best land, they got the best positions in society and government, etc. Okay, so while all these other countries in Africa are getting their independence, to these white settlers in Rhodesia, how does independence sound to them? Are they going to want to have an independent country here? Or are they going to want to keep being a colony of the British? Okay.
They don't want to keep being a colony.
Why?
Because if the Africans gain independence, then they're going to take the land and stuff back to the white settlers.
Exactly. The whites are a minority. So if you're going to live in a democracy, chances are that the majority of the people are going to get a majority of the stuff. So in other words, the white settlers will lose their positions of privilege. They don't want that to happen. Now, so then what happens is the white settlers decide, okay, we want to have independence, but we want to have it where nothing changes. The whites still dominate. Now, the leader of the whites-only folks in Zimbabwe, remember, it's still Rhodesia at this point, was a guy named Ian Smith. And if there's not a more white-sounding name than Ian Smith in the history of the world, I don't know which one it would be. So the deal was, remember how the British gave South Africa its independence? Kind of. Well, that's what Rhodesia wants. They want the British to give them their independence, kind of. In other words, they want to be able to make the laws and make the decisions, but they want Britain to protect them. Well, this is 55 years, I was doing math there, 55 years after the British gave South Africa their semi-independence. And the British learned a few things in that length of time. And so the first thing the British said to the Rhodesians was, sure, we will give you the independence you're looking for, but you have to have majority rule in your country. You're not going to have whites minority rule. Rhodesians, of course, don't want that deal, so they just declare themselves independent. And the British say, you can't do that. And the Rhodesians say, yes, we can. And the British don't do anything about it. So Rhodesia just became independent in 1965. And they have a white minority government. Of course, the non-whites in Rhodesia are not thrilled. But it's going to take a while before they can do anything about it. Finally, in 1980, so 15 years of white minority rule, in 1980, a civil war broke out. Now, it takes a while, but the white minority group is going to lose. Now, there are several leaders of the non-whites against the government, but the one who comes out of all this in charge is a guy named Robert Mugabe. Now, at first, it looked like he was going to be someone that was in favor of democracy and everybody having a vote and so on. Over time, Mugabe becomes more and more and more and more of a dictator. And Mugabe is going to actually rule as a dictator until 2018. So 38 years before he's finally ousted from power. By the way, as soon as the whites were kicked out of power, the country became Zimbabwe. In 1980, it became Zimbabwe. Right about in 2018, when Mugabe was getting ousted from power, the whites that had taken over the best land way back when, that land was taken away from them. It was sort of reversal of sort of what had happened in the colonial time. All right, so those are 4 separate countries. All 4 of those stories are, they have a few things in common, but those are all kind of unique. Something in each one of those 4 stories is unique. In Zimbabwe, it's that the whites took over and ran their own country without really getting any permission from anybody. In Tanzania, it was a dictator trying not to be a dictator. In the Congo, it was response to dictatorship with more dictatorship. In Nigeria, it was civil war between the different groups. All right, so that finishes section 3. So we don't have much time, obviously, in class. So make sure you wrote down your homework. Sections 4 and 5. Make sure you write that down. Make sure you have it done by tomorrow.